Cloud. Yoo-hoo! Cloud!
Fuck me!
Cloud, I developed some new materia. Would you like to see it?
Very interesting.
Someone cast holy, cause holy motherfucking it's... Knock knock, who's there? Ring ring, answer the phone. It's... We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to remind you that exist. Now for the weather. Thanks, Mike. As you can see, it's raining out here. They're landing on cars, houses, small children. People are panicking in the streets. Babies are crying. It's here. It's here. Hey, it's your pal Palamation, and welcome to my review of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I beat the original on my Switch a few months ago, so most of the story is still pretty fresh in my mind. I do plan on talking about spoilers, as most of my thoughts on this game are about the story, but I'll save that for last, so the rest of this review will be pretty light on the spoiler side. I decided to break this review down into parts, so we'll discuss the presentation, gameplay, level design, characters, then finally story. Remember, everything I say in this review is my opinion. I'm going solely off of my experience of the game, as well as my experience with the original version. I beat this game on the normal difficulty, so if you beat it on anything other, your experience may be a little different. With that being said, let's get to the review. I figured it best to start with the most obvious thing Square Enix did right, because god dang does this game look good. This is probably one of, if not the most visually impressive game I've ever seen. Cloud and friends have had several outings on different systems and media, but they have never looked nearly as good as they do now. When playing the game, I found myself constantly stopping and moving the camera around just to gawk at how good Cloud looked. The attention to detail combined with top-notch animations made these characters feel like living, breathing people. Well, with the main characters anyway. Whenever I talked to NPCs, their lower quality designs and animations made them seem more like robots than actual people. I'll admit, whenever the camera zoomed in on one of these guys, it took me out of the realism a little bit. That's a very minor nitpick, however, as I can't expect or blame Square Enix for not spending the same amount of time and effort on every random citizen. They weren't slouching on the environments either, though. The slums feel real and lived in. These environments look and feel like actual places full of people just going about their daily lives. And seeing all of the steel structures surrounding this gave me a sense of how it felt to live in a steel jungle. Every once in a while, I'd notice some poor textures or a background that's obviously a stretched out picture, but again, very minor things that I can easily forgive as everything else just looks stunning. Now we have to talk about the music in this game, as I feel it's where Square Enix completely nailed it. I don't think I have a single negative thing to say. I loved every remix, and the sheer amount of remixes is staggering. I came into this game expecting just one remix of each song and to hear the same music for nearly every battle, but no. Nearly each scenario and stage got its own unique remix, with each one being equally amazing. And as the stakes raised, so did the intensity of the music. When in a high-stakes emotional battle, the music pulled me in and made me feel the tension tenfold. Say what you want about Square Enix, but when it comes to music, they never let me down. This game's soundtrack is perfect, and I can't wait to hear what the next parts have in store. This is where my impressions of the game start to become more of a mixed bag. I'll start off by saying this much. I do prefer the remake combat system over the original. Not that I have a problem with the original, I just much prefer real-time battles over turn-based. I blame Kingdom Hearts 2 for showing me how amazing real-time combat can really be. Overall, I like how fighting feels in this game. The abilities were definitely a big plus for me, as they gave me incentive to build up my ATB gauge. With Cloud, I loved using his various abilities, as I really felt the power behind each swing, and I felt like a badass force of nature when hitting the enemy. I'll admit, I didn't use other weapons as much as I should have though, so I missed out on some abilities. Being able to order others around on the fly was definitely a nice touch too, especially being able to do it in extreme slow-mo. I really appreciated that splash of the old combat system mixed in. The targeting could definitely use some work however, as locking onto a specific target was always a pain, and even when I could lock on, it would hardly stick. I also found myself being staggered or interrupted quite a bit. I often would switch away from Cloud to a different character just because he would constantly be staggered, put to sleep, paralyzed, pinned, etc. I wouldn't mind it so much if it didn't happen so often. Also, dodging in this game seemed near impossible half the time. I would flee or roll away from attacks but still get hit no matter what I tried. This especially sucks as Aerith. Girl, I love you, but you are the worst to play as. As for boss battles, I found most fun and a great challenge, but some just felt like huge damage sponges that difficulty just stemmed from how long it took to drain their health. This was especially annoying for bosses that were resistant to physical attacks, so they kept making you use up your ATB gauge on spells. I'll forgive the Hell House battle on this one, however, as just seeing the Hell House with modern graphics was a treat and had me grinning the whole time. My biggest nitpick for the combat would be the inability to give orders to other party members. Most RPGs allow you to tell party members to prioritize healing, attacking, magic, etc. But nope, you have no control over what your party does when you're not directly controlling them, and man can they be stupid. Materia largely works the same, and I'm still a big fan. I like the variety of different types and customizing how a character can fight. Like in my game, Barret made up for Eris's absence by being a badass warlock. And honestly, one of my favorite additions to this remake would have to be the weapon upgrade system. Me, oh my, am I a huge fan of upgradable weapons. It's a thing I wish every RPG had. I find myself becoming attached to certain weapons when I play games, so I get sad when I find something better and it doesn't look nearly as cool. So I love that in this game, I can hold on to the iconic Buster Sword for as long as I want, as long as I keep upgrading it to stay relevant. Oftentimes, upgrade systems in games can be very complex and confusing, but I'm glad to say this one's pretty straightforward and easy to understand. The last thing I have to talk about for the combat is the summons. I love summons in this game. In the original, summons would come in, do a big attack, then leave. In the remake, they hang out for a while and act as a temporary party member. You can choose to use your ATB gauges to have them use their abilities to deliver powerful blows. Then when their time runs out, they'll wrap things up with a devastating final attack. Seeing that summon bar appear in the midst of a difficult battle was always a huge sigh of relief. I'm real excited to see how Knights of the Round will work down the line. Like, are all 13 just gonna appear on the battlefield and overwhelm the enemy? Even if they only come in for one attack, just seeing that beautiful summon animation in modern graphics would be breathtaking. So I'll just cut to the chase. For the most part, I don't care much for the level design in this game. Nearly the whole game just feels like a series of hallways with not much to do except run forward, kill some baddies, and keep running forward. Even when they do throw in some puzzles here and there, they aren't anything too exciting. Most puzzles move painfully slow and are present in the worst parts of the game. I'll avoid talking about the rooftop walk with Aerith, as from what I've seen in other reviews, it's already been talked to death. The place I especially hated was the sewers. This game made me go through the long-ass sewers not once, but twice, and both times were just long, drawn-out sections made to lengthen the game, while nothing exciting even happens. The first sewer visit ends with you going through the ghost train yard, an equally boring and lengthy section with two boss fights. One pretty fun and exciting, and one just a damage sponge who drains your MP because he rarely lets you do physical damage. And the second sewer visit just ends with a boss fight that you've already done. The biggest offender for me was Hojo's lab, as it's a roughly 2-hour section of nothing but stairs, switches, and phone calls between the two teams. Oh, and having to watch Red 13 run back and forth half the time for nothing, as there won't even be a switch to pull on the other side. Nothing exciting happens here, and why it's such a big problem to me is it takes place during the game's climax and really just disrupts the pacing for the finale. Two places I was a big fan of were the Wall Market and the Shinra headquarters. There aren't a lot of towns in this game, but the few that are present are largely just hallways and back alleys with some shops thrown in. The Wall Market was largely the same, but unlike the other towns whose side quests were pretty dull fetch or kill quests, its side quests were unique and exciting. I guess you could argue these were more main quests as most were required, but they're still set up like side quests, so I'm just gonna call them that. But in these side quests you had to partake in a squat competition, a fighting tournament, get a hand massage, with a possible happy ending, perform a dance routine, and get a complete makeover. I was excited to see how the remake would handle this part of the story, and they exceeded my expectations. I was completely immersed in this section and enjoyed every second of it from start to finish. I do miss the bonus quest to make Cloud the prettiest he can be, but they replaced it with multiple dress options for everyone, so I'll forgive it. Next up, we have the Shinra headquarters. This is where the finale of the game takes place, but I'll save talking about the story segments for later, so no spoilers yet. I love the overall atmosphere of this building. They really nailed the facade that Shinra was trying to pull. Several of the display setup gave the illusion of a legit company working for the people. Even though the exhibits you walk through go pretty slow, everything I was hearing and seeing kept my attention the whole time. This part also has one of the game's coolest cutscenes, though I have some gripes with it that I'll discuss later. Viewing everything in the building and hearing the lies the company fed the public really just amped up my disgust for Shinra. And as you moved your way up each floor of the building, the intensity grew more and more. Well, up until you get to Hojo's lab anyway, where the game comes to a slow and painful halt. The characters are arguably the highlight of this game. It's another piece I feel Square Enix completely nailed. The characters act not only like their original selves, but even better. A big problem I've had with modern iterations of Cloud is his emo nature. He just looks dead inside and hardly shows any emotion. This isn't how I remember Cloud, so it's a relief to see him back to his old self. While he still isn't the most expressive, he doesn't come off as sad, just kind of self-centered. And it's nice to see him with a sense of humor, even if it's a bit deadpan. While he still has plenty of room left to grow by the end of the game, his progression from an asshole to only kind of a dick who loves his friends is touching. Barrett's cooled off on the cursing, but is still as loud and aggressive as always. Tifa is still 10 out of 10 best girl, and Aerith returns to her sassy, rebellious nature, breaking away from her modern saint depiction. The side characters Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge get the biggest upgrades of all. They go from one-off characters of little significance to fully fleshed out characters with their own backstories and complex lives. I enjoyed nearly every second I spent with these three, and getting to delve further into their lives made me feel an attachment to them that frankly wasn't there in the original. Jessie actually shot up quite a bit in my shipping scale with Cloud, though she's still nowhere near the level of Tifa and Aerith. She comes off a bit strong for my taste. I especially enjoyed the quest where I visited Jessie's parents. This is the quest that made me really connect with the team and feel like I was part of them. Plus that motorcycle boss battle was pretty sweet. I really enjoyed getting to spend more time with each character in this game, and even the parts where the game slowed down and have some character moments didn't bother me at all since I was deeply invested in everyone. It was nice to hear everyone's thoughts on what we were doing and to hear all the characters' worries and regrets. Hearing those characters question their actions and motives really gave an extra level of realism to them. I always say the most important part of a story isn't the plot, but rather the characters, as I can follow a simple plot if I love the characters, but it's hard to invest in an intriguing plot if I don't feel for any of the characters involved. This game wins out by not only having a great plot, but a stellar cast of characters to get behind. Now we can get to the final part of this review. Before I move on, just know it's going to be spoilers from here on out. Not only for the original game, but remake specific spoilers as well. So if you don't want to get spoiled, exit out of this video and come back after you beat it. If you already beat it or just don't care, let's mosey to our final section. It's common knowledge by now, but for anyone who doesn't know, the remake is based only on the Midgar section of the original game, which is roughly just the first 6 hours. The remake stretches this out to around 30 to 35 hours. They use this extra time to flesh out the characters and story, giving us more touching character moments and better explanations as to what's going on in the world. There are moments in this game, however, that feel added in just to lengthen the game, such as the sewer and Ghost Train Yard I mentioned earlier. A story segment I didn't care for in the Ghost Train Yard was the flashbacks Aerith was having from her childhood. It just felt unnecessary. I already know she had a horrible childhood from having her mom taken from her and constant Shinra interference. You don't need to shove in some junk about her being unpopular as a kid. I feel bad enough for her already, and seeing this scene shoehorned in just makes it feel a little forced. I did enjoy the underground lab section of the game, however, as seeing Barrett and Tifa interact and make it on their own without Cloud was refreshing. My biggest story complaint would have to be Sephiroth. In the original, you hardly see or hear of him for most of the game. In the remake, he shows up all the time and has full-on dialogue with you. I get that he's a huge selling point for the franchise, and most people are fully aware he exists, but I wish this game didn't just treat the player like they already know the story. One of my favorite moments for the Midgar section in the original was waking up in captivity and seeing all the cell doors unlocked with blood covering the floor. The music is dark and tense, and you walk around the building with a huge sense of,
what the hell happened here?
when you make your way to President Shinra, he's dead with a long katana sticking out of his back. Now that is how you introduce the antagonist. You don't even see him, but from this alone, you know that he's a real threat and a frightening force of nature. In the remake, you're already fully aware he exists. You see him wandering the halls before anything even happens, and you watch him kill President Shinra. The creepy atmosphere and mystery from the original is completely gone. And while the remake's version isn't horrible, it pales in comparison to the sense of dread I felt in the original. The biggest offense was making Sephiroth the final boss. While the fight was intense and cool to look at, I didn't feel like I'd earned this yet. I guess Square Enix is trying to pander to its fans by shoving Sephiroth in our face, but in the original, you only fight him as the final battle and never any time before. The boss fight that takes place before this would have worked perfectly fine as a fulfilling and epic final battle. This final battle just felt like pure fan service. I can't help but feel this will only take away some of the thrill from fighting him when the final part of the remake comes out. I understand that this story is different from the original. This is a future Sephiroth that is trying to change the timeline to one where he wins, but they definitely could have held off on it a bit. He doesn't need to be so in our face to be manipulating things from the sidelines. I would have been okay with quick little glimpses or hints of him, but this was just way too much. The last story bit I want to discuss is about the Whispers. My relationship with these guys is a rocky one. I started out intrigued by them, believing them to be extensions of Sephiroth or something like that, but then when I found out they were Arbiters of Fate, I was not a fan. I'm not really big into the whole fate or destiny gimmick in stories, and Final Fantasy VII seemed like a story that's above all that. It's more grounded and things are left up to the actions of the characters, not some fate or destiny junk. I felt this way up until the final battle with them. For one, this battle was awesome, and with a few tweaks, this should have been the actual final battle. Once I defeated them, I found out their true relevance to the story, and my thoughts on them became, well, complicated. By defeating them, you have broken the wheel of fate, and now the original timeline of Final Fantasy VII means nothing. You created a reality where Zack lives, which I'm a little upset we see him already, since his reveal is one of the biggest plot twists for the original. Again, I feel people who don't know the original story are really having a lot of great moments just taken from them. But that's the thing. From here on, I have no idea how this story will play out. This both excites and scares me. I'm excited to see all the new scenes and storylines not present in the original, but at the same time, the original is a masterpiece, and Square Enix hadn't had the best track record lately. I worry I'll miss out on great moments recreated from the original and receive overly complicated nonsense instead. I mean, this is Tetsuya Nomura we're talking about. I love Kingdom Hearts, but as a huge fan, I fully understand people's frustration with the story. I'll be happy if they pull it off and give us some great new additions to the Final Fantasy VII lore, but if it's a train wreck, I would have much preferred just a direct remake. Only time will tell, but either way, I am excited to see what happens next. So that's my review of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Overall, this is a fantastic game. It is a visible and audible masterpiece. The combat is fun and exciting, though it can be a bit annoying and unfair at times. The level design is fairly limited, but I'm excited to see how much the world opens up in the future. The story and characters are complex and really pull you in, even if some slower moments can really ruin the pace. I don't agree with several sources claiming this to be a perfect game, which is obvious if you were paying any attention, but it's also hard to rate this game on its own. I'll definitely have to rate these games together once each part is out, since the story plays such a huge role in my feelings on the game. Rating the game on its own merit, however, I give it a 7 out of 10. I didn't choose this number as some dumb pun, it's my honest thoughts. There's definitely room for improvement, but if Square Enix fixes some of these issues I mentioned, then the next parts could easily score much higher. And it's not like they'll change it to where Aerith doesn't die. Right? Right?